It's time to go out with the new and in with the old. Yeah, I'm talking about the Turbo 400. Stick around. Hey everybody, welcome back to the garage, and as always, big shout out to all the new subscribers out there and to all of our sponsors. Check the links down below. Go show them some love. Nitrous Express, Snow Performance, ADM Performance, ICT Billet, Bench Force, programming harnesses. Who am I missing? There's got to be, just go down below and check out all of our sponsors. Without them, none of this would be possible, and big shout out to those guys. And thanks to everybody that shows up on Thursday night for the live show. Don't miss the live shows. It's 8 Eastern. We try to do it every single week unless I've got crazy stuff going on. And I also have classes still going on. I got 5th gen and 3rd gen. I've already got the 4th gen out this month. If you missed it, keep your eyes peeled. I'm going to be doing it every couple months where we sit down, go over a lot of different topics, talk about specific things. I answer any of your questions you may have along the way, and we kind of go through setting up the scanner, going into the tune, all the different things that you might run into through the tuning process, some tips and tricks that I've picked up over the years. A lot of this information is already available. If you go over to tuning101.com, it takes you to our YouTube homepage. Click the playlist. There are hundreds of tuning videos over there. Check them out. But today we are talking about the Turbo 400, and let's start off by why we're doing this. We've got the 6L80 in here, a very capable transmission. Don't get me wrong, this thing will handle power for days, but we have very short ratios, and as we start making ginormous, let's see if we can say the word right, ginormous, ridiculous amounts of power like we are on the truck right now, those ratios become really, really short. And it's just very hard to go out and do anything whenever second and third gear are just a split second. So, solution, bigger vehicle, Turbo 400. Nice thing about this is, A, they're readily available. 2, they can be built stronger than all get out. 3, torque converters for a Turbo 400 are a fraction of what they are for the 6L80. In fact, I canceled my TCI torque converter because it was over 2 months and still hadn't shipped. Understand COVID-19 slowing things down, so nothing against those guys down there. It's just to the point where I'm spending $1,000 for a torque converter, and that is half the cost of a Turbo 400 transmission, which will alleviate tuning, racing, everything. This is no longer really a street truck. We'll still be able to drive it on the street, don't get me wrong. It will have decent manners for that matter, but the main goal is to produce the best power out of this, the best times at the track. So the Turbo 400 is the way to go. We're going to be picking that up this weekend. Before we do that though, we can start prepping some other things along the way. One of them being our new shifter. We're going with the Hurst quarter stick front exit. It is the reverse pattern because we'll be running a reverse pattern Turbo 400 with a trans brake on it, which will also be nice. The big thing about this is to get it set up in the truck in a position that's good, but we got to also keep in mind down the road we will be swapping out the factory seat to a race seat, which will put us a little bit lower and probably a little bit further back. So it may not be the best position for the factory seat that we're looking for, but we'll try and find a happy medium. Worst case scenario, if we have to, we can go back in, change the bracket whenever we're done, and kind of adjust where the location of the shifter is. But for now, we're going to go ahead and start setting up what we can. I'm going to try and document this process along the way, so anybody that's interested in doing it, this should help you out. Now, this has been done a lot on the Camaros, but you also have to remember that those were running E38s or, an earlier Gen 4 ECU all the way up until like 2017. I don't know that this has been done on a Gen 5, so this may be the first Gen 5 Turbo 400 swap. If you know of somebody else that's done it already, let me know down in the comments. I would like to pick their brain on what they did on the ECU side of it. I think what we're going to try to do is we'll do the drop-down choose manual. The problem with that is in the background there's tables that we don't have access to on that operating system, but I think there might be a way to take a Corvette tune file, do a right and tire on that with a manual setup on there, and it will do some funky stuff, but with the Global A platform, the VIN numbers are locked in the ECM already, so it should retain the VIN number. It will just cost us money because we're going to have to license a few extra files. We'll have to license the Corvette file to write it, and then whenever it's written in there, we will probably have to license the Silverado again, because the OS is not going to match up to the original OS that was on the VIN. So we'll see how that goes, and it'll be a learning experience down the road. We may have some pitfalls, things like that, but stick around. We'll get everything figured out, and we'll get this thing on the road. The idea is to try and get the transmission in this weekend sometime, at least by early next week. That way we can measure out, get an order in for a drive shaft, because that's going to be the longest process of it. It'll take a couple weeks to get a custom drive shaft made for our length here. So let's go ahead and jump into the cab, take a look at what's going on. Okay, so we got everything stripped out of the way here. I've even recently, if you followed me on Instagram, I am on Instagram underneath Goat Rope Garage, you will have seen that I've put a harness bar in. There's cross braces that go down to the factory mounts down here to support it for forward motion if we were to get into an accident. And I've gone ahead and kind of bent a tab into a long piece of aluminum that I think will get us up high enough where we can bring this back down, mount down to our floorboard, and give us a little better height on our Hurst shifter. The idea that I have, that I want to do on this, is get this thing mounted up, and then I'm going to build a console around this area to kind of enclose it in, give me a place to maybe set my laptop down whenever I'm tuning, maybe even cut a cup holder into it or something to make this thing semi-usable. But the big question is, we are in driving position right now where I'm pretty comfortable with the thought that whenever we go over to the race seat, I'm going to not only drop an inch because of the bracket that's in here, I will have customability or customization on where I set the seat. We are going to go lower because my head is too close to the ceiling currently, and so when I have a helmet on, it's a pain in the butt. I did this originally, I put spacers in here because I like to sit up a little bit higher in the vehicles, but in a race application where we do have a helmet on, we're going to want to lower this. So this thing is going to, our race seat that we end up putting in here is going to be at least 4 inches lower, I would guess, maybe 5 inches lower. We're going to have a much more hunkered down position where we're in the car. We're nice and firm so we don't slide back whenever we take off. We're strapped in good. And so that being in mind, we've got to get a good idea of where we're going to want this shifter, because the big thing that we have to keep in mind is we're going all the way back to third, which is going to be quite a ways back. But the nice thing at being reverse valve is we are just going to be pulling, so we got to make sure that we have enough room, elbow room, to pull all the way back to third. So I'm thinking that we're going to want to be about in this area. So the height is a little bit maybe low for in the truck right now, but whenever we get down in the race seat, that'll put us a little bit better angle. And the nice thing about it is we can always come back and make adjustments. But we're going to measure this height right here to get an idea of how high we need to be. And it looks like about 5 inches. So we're going to bring this up at a 5 inch, flatten it out, and then we'll measure out our plate length, do a rundown on the back side, and put a tab on the back side and see if we can't figure out where to actually mount it. Whenever we do that, we will cut some holes in the carpet so we can go straight down into the sheet metal, into the tranny tunnel here. We'll go from there. Okay, so we've got our mount built up here. We've got the shifter bolted down to it, and we've got it in a really nice location where we can work through the gears. That'll give us an idea of where we need to bolt down to. There's a cross brace right underneath here that will be perfect for running a couple self-tappers in. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this out so I know where to cut the carpet out. And that'll put our front one right up in here. We'll do the same. And let me start cutting away at this. Okay, obviously we want to lift everything up, make sure there's no wires underneath here before we start cutting. There's not on this one. And be aware, you're doing this on a Silverado like I am, this is your ABS module. They put it there because it has some motion sensors in it, and they want it to be sitting the same orientation that you are. So you know what's going on there. And even a dull utility knife gets through this stuff pretty easily. See if I can do this without cutting myself. I hardly get anything done without bleeding, so don't be surprised. Hopefully there's a flat enough area underneath here, and there is. Looks like it's fairly flat right here that we can just run some self-tappers in, make our lives easy. I'll go ahead and drill some pilot holes in the bracket. Oh man, this would be easier with a sharp knife. Okay, I got some nice big self-tappers here. And we've got the option, if we need a little more support, we could come in here and weld a couple struts across to help support this thing out. But we'll see how it does once we get it mounted in here. Make sure you double check what's beneath before you ever do this. You don't want to run into any wiring. We'll hit the front ones. Might need to run longer ones in the front. I don't know if it's getting down to the sheet metal, but boom. Okay, park. Reverse. Neutral. First. Second. Third. Back into neutral. Reverse lockout into reverse. Back into park. What do you think? Oh yeah. As I said, she's a little side to sidey, but it's pretty solid in here. Said if we boxed in the sides, that would firm that up some, but I'm not really too worried about, because it's the way that we built this bracket with this angle going down in the back. We're doing most of our force going in backwards, pulling backwards. And so we have a nice angle on here that goes against our shifter. Into third. Now this might be a little high whenever we get the race seat in there, but at the same time, because of the bolsters on race seats, it might be a little bit better to have it high and further forward. So we've got options. So that is literally just the first step of this project, getting the shifter in place. We don't really want to run the cable till we know where the transmission's going to be at, where the input is, and we can kind of figure all that out. I'm going to work on the center console, kind of get some ideas on that. I'm not going to show you guys that portion of it. I'll show you when it's done, but it's not going to be anything special. As I said, it's just going to be a box kind of around the shifter to clean things up, give us a little workspace maybe, etc. So let me know what you think of it. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out so far. I'm super excited to be tackling this project and documenting this information for people out there, especially on the Gen 5 stuff that might be going to a wild build where they need a transmission, such as the Turbo 400 or a Power Glide. And the nice thing about the Turbo 400, you can even go to a Turbo Glide 2-speed, and all of your equipment is going to remain the same. You can just put your lockout. There is a 2-speed lockout on your quarter shift for Power Glide. You can use that on a Turbo Glide if you end up going over to a Turbo Glide. But I'm guessing if you are running a Turbo Glide, you're a high enough horsepower that you don't need this video. So I'm going to get back to it. You guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage. Remember, ABT, always be tuning.